Spider-Man, a Spider-Man.
The biggest movie of the year is right around the corner and I could not be more hyped. I apologize for the way that I'm going to be acting this week. It's going to be insane. But today I really wanted to show you guys some of my custom Spider-Man figures as well as some things in order to upgrade and improve and even just give your minifigures sort of an alternate look if you really wanted to in order to celebrate this film's release. Now, I don't care if you think that Toby and Andrew aren't going to appear in the movie. I just had to include them in this intro. Okay, it looks cool. Now, the Spider-Man MCU movies have graced us with some fantastic figures, and it's such a step up from just the one Comic-Con figure and that random polybag that we got with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. But there's still a few things that I would like to change, and especially looking at Lego now and looking at it back in 2002 when Tobey's films were out, there are some major changes and major upgrades that can be done to those characters. So much so that when I was rewatching them, I just made my own versions of the characters. So let's go through them one by one. So first up is an upgrade that I've talked about before on this channel, and that is actually swapping out the legs on your Spider-Man. Now, I still haven't done it because I'm worried about how it will sort of work with the old hips, with new legs, if it will sort of weaken the joints and stuff, like if I put them back. However, someone in my comments did say that they did it and it actually made the joints stronger, so maybe that's something you could do, but I thought I would mention it. And in case you were wondering what it looks like, here's my little Photoshop version from my other video. Next up, we have Mary Jane from the Sam Raimi films, and honestly, I do not like her as a character, but I really wanted to try and make the figure so that I could like throw her off the buildings or bridges. Like, it's so mean, but I had to do it. And the best thing that I found was honestly Ginny Weasley's Slug Club dress from the Harry Potter CMF Series 2. It just screamed to me Mary Jane. I don't know what it is about it, and I think it worked pretty well. And then as for her face, I've just taken that very typical and overused ginger female face. It's really nothing special. I like that it's got quite a scared expression. It reminds me quite a lot of Mary Jane, and honestly, the smirk also shows sort of how annoying she is. And then I've just given her this sort of typical over-the-shoulder regular sort of female hairpiece, very common, very easy. But I also think that the Ginny hair off that Ginny Weasley figure also works pretty well, but I don't know, to me this just looks a bit too much like Ginny Weasley considering they literally use that face to represent the character. So I personally like the shorter version, but I think either one will do, and then you can finally just annoy MJ. But if that's not accurate enough for you, I highly recommend swapping out her head with the one and only Black Canary from the Lego Batman movie CMF, because I think it just perfectly captures how she's screaming literally all the time. Moving on to the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, and we have Tobey Maguire's Comic-Con outfit. Now, I wish I had this minifigure, but at the price of $13,000, I just can't quite justify it. I can't quite figure out why that would be, but anyway. I feel like this was one of the early Comic-Con figures and they hadn't quite sort of nailed down the style that they were going to go for with them, and I feel like his printing is honestly kind of weak. These days, I feel like the legs would be dual molded, and I think that would make a world of difference, especially considering the printing. I also feel like side leg printing would definitely be a thing and definitely should have been a thing on this figure. Then again, I don't think it was really common back then for that to have happened. Either way, I really love the face print. I think it looks fantastic. And the torso print as well, the detailing is really nice, and overall I just love this figure. I wish I had it in my collection. I'm desperate, but I'm not that desperate to spend the money on it. So moving on to Spider-Man Homecoming, and first up we've got the brand new Vulture minifigure that comes in the Spider-Man drone jewel, and there's really nothing that I really want to change necessarily. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could add some printed legs, but personally I just kind of prefer the plain olive green legs. However, I thought it would be really cool if we did an unmasked version of the Vulture, because the only real sort of Vulture face that we've gotten is his alternate face with his like goggles aren't quite on, but it doesn't even really scream Michael Keaton to me. It just screams we wanted to put an alternate face on, so here it is. So I thought I would show you how to make your own. Now first up, we want to find a face, and personally I think the Book Tom Riddle version slash this Hydra agent's face is probably the best one you could go to. Another idea could be that typical Lex Luthor one, but I feel like that's overdone as is. I mean, why wouldn't you take this different one? I also think the smirk works a lot better for the Vulture, which is why I decided to go with this one. And plus, since no one really cares about a Hydra agent, he's going to be pretty cheap to get. When it comes to the hair, this one was easy to guess, and it was just that typical sort of Peter Venkman hair in either light grey or dark bluish grey. I don't think it would really make too much difference, but since I don't have that dark grey version, I just grabbed this light grey one of one of my Mos Eisley figures, and I'm just gonna stick it on the top. And I wish that the eyebrows matched, but honestly, I'm not really surprised. Then taking off the Vulture's head, we'll stick this one on the top, and suddenly you have an unmasked version of the Vulture that looks relatively like Michael Keaton, at least good enough for my liking. I really wish that they did include an alternate face, especially since a face like this hasn't been reused too many times. I feel like would have been perfect. Next up is Ned. Now usually with these videos, I don't usually like putting pieces in that are really hard to find or really expensive or kind of rare without offering a substitute. However, I had this piece lying around in my collection and I just could not put this in this video. I think it was far too funny. And that was to grab my good old Indiana Jones figure and steal his fedora in order to make party version of Ned. This is such an obscure thing and there's really no reason to do this besides the fact that I thought it would be quite funny to put Ned in his fedora just like in Homecoming. Personally, I think this looks absolutely fantastic, although I can safely say that I will not be putting him on display or in my collection like this. Next up is another modification that I've sort of mentioned before in another video, and that is Peter Parker from the Far From Home set. Now, this one actually has the Spider-Man CMF face. That is the first thing I would do if you haven't swapped it out already. I've left mine like this for quite a while now, but one thing that I did actually forget to do in that original video was swap out the legs. I mean, it's not really a huge deal. It's a pretty minor detail, but one thing that I did think would look even better is actually taking these just regular blue jeans off the Harry Potter CMF Series 2 figure and putting them on Peter Parker just to give him a tiny bit of shoe detailing and just really just elevate this figure just a tiny bit more. It's so simple, but I feel like it makes quite a reasonable difference. Just like Vulture from Homecoming, we never actually got an unmasked version of Mysterio. We didn't get a Quentin Beck face. And honestly, it's kind of a shame, but I feel like, unlike Vulture, this one's actually even easier to sort of replicate for yourself. Now for Quentin Beck, personally, I feel like the best face you could use in order to make this character is actually the original Chris Pratt face. I just feel like that smirk is perfect for Quentin Beck. He was very cheeky, very sly, very manipulative, and I feel like it works really well, especially his angry face too. I think it just matches him perfectly from that final battle. There's also some good cheekbones, and you have the stubble, of course. I think it matches really well. As for the hairpiece, you could go with the classic tousled side-swept one, but I feel like that's kind of boring, and honestly, I think the Han Solo hairpiece matches a bit better. I mean, it doesn't really matter, I think, which hair color you go with. You could go with the dark brown one from the Rapunzel set on Flynn Rider, or you could just go with the basic Han Solo reddish brown one. Whatever's easiest for your collection. Personally, I sort of prefer the dark brown one to the reddish brown one, just because I feel like it matches the eyebrow print of this face a lot better, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. Up next, we've got the classic Iron Spider suit, and honestly, I feel like this suit works pretty well in Endgame, but I am so sick of seeing it right now. I cannot stand it. Now, with this figure, for the most part, it's really well made. I do wish, though, that the red parts were more dark red, sort of looking a bit more like this. I feel like that would be a peak version of the figure. I also wish that these legs were dual molded. The fact that you can sort of tilt Spider-Man back and see the red on his legs is sort of frustrating, especially when you turn it around to the side. Just doesn't feel quite as detailed as something like the Homecoming suit, which is sort of a shame. But the big change that I really want to do and need to get the parts for this figure is actually swapping out the mechanical arms. I feel like these pieces that were used on the regular comic suit Iron Spider figure look so much better, and I'm currently in the process of trying to find some and get some and sort of replicate that same build in order to put it on my Spider-Man figure, because personally I think it matches the ones from the movies so much better. Now, these arms combined with the figure being dark red instead, I feel like would have been the perfect version, but at least we can still swap out the arms even if we can't sadly change the color of the printing. One character that I wish we had, but honestly I'm not surprised that we don't, is Aunt May, and in order to make her, the first thing I want to do is take Monica from the LEGO Ideas Friends Central Perk set. I don't know what it is, but I feel like this outfit screams Marissa Tomei Aunt May. Like, it's the perfect amount of sort of like vintage, being like, you know, set in the 90s and being quite classic, but also looking incredibly stylish and sort of up to date with what we have today. Now, in an ideal world, the face print would have glasses and sort of match this look of Aunt May instead. However, unfortunately at the moment, at least in my collection, I don't have a piece that sort of represents that all too much. There's a couple from The Big Bang Theory, but even then, I don't think there's one that perfectly matches, or at least one that I could find that perfectly matches. Please, if you have one, let me know in the comments down below what it is so I can go look for it. So instead, for the time being, the head that I'm actually going to go with is the sort of Tonks Captain Carter one from the What If shows. I don't know, it sort of matches her. I feel like it also slightly looks a tiny bit too young in some ways, but I feel like it's good enough for now. And the hair, of course, has to be that classic Elizabeth Swann hair. It matches the length, it matches the curls. I feel like it is just perfect for Aunt May, and combining them, I actually think it looks pretty sort of accurate, especially the outfit. Like, I'm really happy with how that looks. But like I said, I just feel like a face with glasses sort of like this would look so much better and be the perfect Aunt May figure. I don't think we're ever gonna get one, but at least you can make your own. Next up is Dr. Stephen Strange, and unlike my other Doctor Strange upgrades, we're not going to swap out his cape, we're not going to swap out his hair or his face or do anything like that. We're just going to give him a completely different outfit. The only reason that this Doctor Strange is here is so that I can steal his cape, his face, and his hairpiece. So highly recommend getting this figure if you want to try this out. Because if you haven't guessed it, we're going to make the classic Dr. Dad Strange. I don't know why, he just reminds me of a dad in this scene, like holding the little like cheesy pun mug and just wearing like his winter clothes. Like, I really hope you're getting that vibe, otherwise I just sound like an idiot right now. So in order to do this, firstly, you'll probably need Hermione's legs from the Harry Potter 2 CMF. If you look really closely in the trailer, you can actually see the Doctor Strange have some sort of like Ugg boots on to like walk around in the snow, which is the exact reason that I wanted to use this piece. And shockingly, this piece has come quite in handy, considering I just feel like not many people wear grey boots with fur at the top quite often. The second piece is a pretty common one, and that is just Harry Potter's jacket from majority of the Prisoner of Azkaban sets. You could also use this sort of new dark red puffer jacket, but to me, I would rather have the blue jacket. I feel like that matches Doctor Strange's outfit a bit better than have a puffer jacket that's the wrong color. Then we're just going to put the cape and his head and hair on top of that, and suddenly we've got Dr. Dad Strange. But I feel like just to make it even better, you really got to give him a mug or a little teacup just to top it all off. And he looks super chill, super relaxed and casual, and I really wish that this figure came in the set just so that it was a bit different, a bit more unique, sort of giving more Bro Thor vibes instead of just here's Doctor Strange. Now, at the time of filming this, the movie still hasn't come out, and I have no clue if Daredevil or Matt Murdock is going to be in the film. I don't think Daredevil's going to be in it, but I have a strong feeling that Matt Murdock could show up in the film, so I thought I would include this figure in this video anyway. Now, personally, to me, the Daredevil figure from the Daily Bugle is spot on. I really didn't feel the need to swap out the legs. However, I did find a really good match for them the other day in Build a Minifigure, and it is this pair. For some reason, they're screaming Star Wars to me, but I can't remember if this is Sith Trooper legs or if this is just a random pair of legs. I will try and look it up, but I feel like those little knee pads being the same dark gray that's on the torso just matched really well. So I wanted to swap it out and actually test it out, and I'm quite pleasant with the results. I really feel like, though, this figure isn't one that necessarily needs upgrading or extra detail or things like that. I think the simplicity worked in his favor, but if you want to test it out and maybe make it look a tiny bit more like the Netflix show instead of sort of a comic book, then this one is for you. Again, not confirmed for Spider-Man, and unlike Daredevil, I don't think Kingpin is going to show up, but I wanted to show you guys this since Kingpin is a huge Spider-Man villain. Now, in order to make my custom Kingpin, firstly what I did is took the Joker's torso and legs from the DC series CMF, and then I swapped out the hands so that they were no longer white and actually had sort of more flesh tone to them. And then because Kingpin is bald, I gave him the classic Lex Luthor face, since it's not double-sided, so it's not like there would be any awkward printing lying around. And then to make his staff, it was very simple. I took one of those really short bar pieces, a spare black lightsaber hilt, and added a white gem at the top to sort of make it feel really comical comic booky, like it wasn't in the Netflix show, it wasn't even really from memory in the PlayStation 4 game. He definitely had a cane. Whether or not the gem was on the top is purely up to my memory at this point. But I think it was a really cool accessory, and it matches his drawing that appears in the Daily Bugle set, which again is why I wanted to give it to him. Next up, we have Carnage. Now, I know he has nothing to do with any of the MCU films, but since he is a pretty popular Spider-Man character, I don't even want to say villain, but just a Spider-Man character, I thought I would include him here. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with this figure. In fact, I love the Daily Bugle's version's appendages. I think they're fantastic. However, the original Carnage had arm printing, and that's just something we do not see these days. So in order to upgrade this guy, I ordered myself the original Carnage torso, and I'm just going to swap out the arms. I mean, you could just put this torso straight on, but personally, I liked the fact that the pattern here just continues on. The whole color scheme sort of matches, and I'll just swap out the arms just to give it that tiny bit of extra printing. Now, the black on the torso definitely isn't quite as intense and close together as the one on the arm, but I really feel like that just that extra tiny bit of printing makes a really big difference with Carnage, especially considering the amount of detail on the symbiote itself. I really, really like this upgrade, and while, again, you can't really see it even with these little handheld attachments, it's just a nice detail, and I think it really improves it a lot. So if you haven't got the torso or you haven't got that old figure, I highly suggest looking into getting those pieces. So those are all of my different Spider-Man upgrade ideas, as well as alternates, as well as custom figures, and overall, I honestly feel like Doctor Strange has to be my favorite. I don't know, it's so simple, it's so funny, it's so cheesy, just like Ned in the fedora. Like, you really don't need to do it, but I'm glad I showed you. Hopefully you found some of the upgrades in this video useful, and let me know if you've done any for yourself or if you've tried any of these out. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to my channel down below. And if you haven't checked out my other videos where I upgraded a lot of the Marvel superheroes, I will leave them linked at the end here. And until next time, guys, I'll see you later.